There we go.
Welcome to the Josh Huisman Podcast.
There we go is right. Welcome to another episode of the Josh Huisman Podcast. And it's always good to be here with you every single week. And if you like the episodes and who we're talking to, or, just the podcast in general, share it with your friends, share it with your family, let them know that we're out here. And you will already notice that I got a little more bass in my voice this week. Dealing with a little laryngitis I've been getting over, but it's all good now because I got my good buddy here, Pastor Mitch Davis of Franklin Church of Christ, who's hanging out with me today. Should we just call you Mitch? What do you want to be?
Mitch is perfect.
Mitch is perfect.
Yes.
Man, thanks for coming in here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I can roll with the bass baritone part with you since I'm just getting over mine as well.
It's been passed around by a lot of Nashville folks lately.
Yes.
With this weather going back and forth. It'll do that when one Sunday morning it's 1 degree and then the next day it's 55.
Yeah.
That's what tends to happen to our voices.
Welcome to Tennessee.
I know, right? It's insane. We're only 2 weeks removed from Snowpocalypse 2024, which is insanity. If it snows, see, I grew up in Chicago, and people are like, "Oh, you guys can't handle a little bit of snow," and I'm like, with these hills, you don't get it. If it ices over and it snows, we're in trouble.
Right.
And it shuts everything down. And so when you see you got to get the bread and milk, that kind of stuff, like you better go get your bread and milk.
Yes.
Because it's going to get wiped out.
And I saw the store shelves, and people got their bread and milk.
They did. Hey, we couldn't get further. Okay, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. Yep. You grew up
on the south side of Maui.
Same thing. Same thing. I mean, I could almost the same scenery and all
That's
that
right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, very similar.
So you were in Maui, on Maui. See, I'm already going to mess this up.
No, you're doing good.
We were talking about it before. I was like, on Maui?
On Maui.
I guess it is an island. Oh, yeah. What made you want to go, I'm going to leave this tropical paradise and I'm going to Nashville, Tennessee?
Believe it or not, while I was growing up on the island, I was not able to afford going to school. And so my mind was going into the Air Force, getting grant money, and then go to school when I get out of the military. My wrestling coach had other plans, and I ended up coming to the mainland on a scholarship. And that's what brought me to
a wrestling scholarship.
Yeah.
Oh, so you can hurt people.
Maybe a fly.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. So then all right, let's talk some ministry stuff here because so how, college age, 18, 19 years old, you come here on a wrestling scholarship.
Correct.
Is ministry anywhere in play at this point?
No, I did not even know who Jesus Christ was. I just know the name is tied to religion. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So then you got to walk me through this. Like what was the introduction? What did this look like?
I had a number of introductions while growing up on Maui. So the earliest memory I had, about 5 years old, my next door neighbor goes to the Catholic Church and invites me over. So that's one memory. Another was a funeral. Another was I found out I was at a retreat, and only in hindsight did I realize it was some kind of religious retreat because I was in this double profile line. It happened to be on a Sunday morning because of the context. Mm-hmm. And I'm hearing this whispering up ahead of me, and I see this religious person, and I see this child or a line of children ahead of me, and they're talking to each other, but I don't know what they're saying until it's my turn to get up there. And this man gives me what looks like a piece of bread, and he says, "The Lord be with you." Thanks.
Yeah.
That's what I told him. I said, thanks.
Yeah.
And
appreciate it.
I mean, he thought I was being very disrespectful and what have you. I had no clue what I was doing there. Mm-hmm. I just thought I was at a fun weekend retreat. So that was that experience. I remember in high school in Lahaina, where I was in a boarding program, and this place was a church building, but I did not know that it was a church building. I was so naive. I thought it was a movie theater because there was a marquee above the building that said, "Jesus, coming soon."
Okay.
So that gives you a sense of how much I know about what's going on religiously. And it wasn't until I came to the mainland, I was going into my senior year of college. I went with the Southwestern Book Company out of Nashville, got sent to Ohio to knock on doors, live with a family, and then from there sell books for the summer. And it was there that a family shared Jesus with me.
And you're like, that's the name that was on the marquee.
Yes. In hindsight. Like all these light bulbs went off. Like, that's a church, or that's who Jesus is related to, and all of these different things that came together. In fact, I remember that first worship service. I was, again, supposed to be meeting with the Southwestern Book Company, but the family asked me to come to a Bible study, and this family is keeping me in their home, a complete stranger in their basement. And so I thought, if they're going to invite me, I'm going to go with them. So I had listened to a Bible study, heard my very first sermon, and that's when I realized, like, I think he's talking about me. Like, I need to have this relationship with God. And so that's when I
So how old were you?
I was 20, almost 21.
Wow.
Just a couple months shy of 21.
So, I grew up in church, and for as long as I can remember, have had a relationship with the Lord. And so it's fascinating to me whenever you meet someone who's past 20 years old who came to a relationship with Christ after that date.
Yeah.
And so you have many memories of not knowing the Lord.
Correct.
And what's it like, Mitch? Tell me, what's the difference between the two,
What's interesting is, although I did not know who Jesus was, I prayed to God from time to time. I was a senior in high school, wrestling, and it was like, have you ever seen Vision Quest?
It's been a while.
Wrestling movie.
Okay.
This guy going against the stud.
Okay.
Well, I was going against the stud, and I remember going into the bathroom of this gymnasium. It's where they play the Maui Invitational.
Okay.
So that we had a wrestling tournament in that gym in Lahaina Civic Center, and I was going against this guy. His name was Troy Schatz, and he was the stud.
Shout out to Troy.
Shout out to Troy. And I was told I was going to get killed, just all these different things. And the guy looks like a man going against boys. And so I prayed to God, and I did the whole, because I saw people do this thing. I don't know what that was, but that's what you do. And so I did that, and I won like 4 or 5-0. I forget what it was. It was like this big eruption over with the stadium and what have you. So that was a memory that I have, very distinct. Like, I prayed to God over that. And the second one that I remember distinctly praying is, I prayed that my girlfriend would not get pregnant.
Okay.
Those are my memories of God before becoming a follower of God.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so when you got introduced to Christ and you began that relationship, what were some things that immediately made you think, I need Jesus?
Well, my lifestyle was what I knew I needed Jesus, because my lifestyle was filled with, from smoking marijuana, getting drunk, having sex, and always wondering, like, am I going to die? Am I going to, will this cause these life changes to be so drastic? And so I knew I needed him when I heard that message. So it resonated with me very powerfully. I mean, I actually had a girl that I was sleeping with.
At that time?
Yes. And so the very next day, she didn't see me up until a few hours after I was baptized right into Christ. And I couldn't even give her a kiss on the cheek without feeling guilty. It was such a switch, an immediate switch, that I broke off that relationship with her. I said, I don't want to live this life anymore. And so it was very, very drastic. And when I got back to Kearney, Nebraska at the college, guys on the wrestling team looked like, what in the world happened to you?
Yeah.
I like, Jesus happened to me. Let me tell you about him.
Let me tell you about my Savior.
Yeah.
That is really interesting. We were talking, I was having a conversation with someone earlier, and we were talking about, people's lifestyles and all these different things. And what has happened more and more in our culture is that people find it too difficult to change. They read something, they might hear something from the Bible, they might have something preached to them, whatever it may be, and the fallback now these days has been to go, it's not sin, it's not a problem. I'm just going to justify it and let God adjust to my life and continue to live in the way that I'm doing. And here you're sharing the story, and the reason why I said it, because the conversation that I had with someone else is there needs to be a place for true biblical conviction.
Yeah.
that when the Lord puts it on us, to not go, well, no, I'm just going to continue on in this wrong path, but to step back and go, okay, Jesus, help me, deliver me from this, and and that's what it sounds like happened to you.
It was from all kinds of directions, not just from that real heinous, real sinful. It's very black and white, but even just the underlining, the arrogance. I was as small and tiny as I was growing up as a kid, smallest in the class, always smallest in the state of Hawaii playing football in the state of Hawaii. But I could do anything in my mind. So God was able to humble me, even just in secular ways that were not sinful in and of themselves, but was an attitude change that says you need to learn to follow me, trust in me, not trust in yourself. And so I have a lot of that whole James chapter 4, let no man say, let us go do this or that city and boast about what we're going to be doing and all the profit we're going to have. That was my life before walking with God.
Wow. And so when you did read that, you're going, oh my goodness.
Oh my, yes.
Thankfully, they didn't put my name in here.
I have so much of that life in me that I can just go distinctly see it. And even whether it was before I began my walk with God, like there was a moment where I was able to serve as a president over an organization for special needs children over the United States and Canada.
Wow.
Lobbying Congress, do the whole thing, all of that. And so I'm looking over thinking, okay, I'm going to go back to Maui. I'm going to be the wrestling coach. I'm going to be the special ed teacher there. Then I'll be the principal. And then I'll be the superintendent for the state of Hawaii.
Yeah.
And in these years.
You had some big plans.
Those were my steps that I had planned out. And God says, you're not in control. And so that's what I'm saying. A variety of ways that he just completely remolded my life into his image.
So how crazy would it be if I had a time machine and I went back and talked to 18-year-old Mitch and I said, hey, Mitch, you're going to be a pastor in Franklin, Tennessee.
I would first of all say, so what is a pastor? Tell me that. But I do know, I remember, because I had people knocking on my door while I was in college, like to have Bible studies and things. Yeah. And I would very politely to them say, no, thank you. But in my heart, I was literally laughing at them, thinking, what nerds? I mean, and then I became the nerd. So
there you go. Well, so was that like immediate? So if you didn't even know, I mean, you probably had some notion of an idea of what a pastor was, or maybe you didn't. But you come to know Christ. I mean, how immediate was then this feeling of I need a calling into ministry to help others?
No calling mindset in my mind.
Okay.
Zero. I'll say this, though. My first few months after getting back to college, I was having Bible studies with everybody and anybody I could share who Jesus was with, to the point where I remember waking up in the middle of the night having a dream. I was Jesus. And I'm in the college campus as Jesus, walking around. And of course, as a wrestler, I'm going to the gym to where I'm going to work out.
This is a dream, mind you.
This is a dream. Okay. Yes, this is a dream that I'm Jesus.
Okay.
And I passed by in this part of the backside of our gymnasium was where the swim team, which is all female swim team. And imagine the swimmers in their swimsuits and what have you. And it was then I realized in the dream that I was not Jesus. But my mind was so inundated. I would study my schoolwork to get done so that I could study God's word, so I could just literally be immersed in him. That I was on fire for the Lord. And so every aspect of my walk with him was to understand who is this God that I am drawing so fervently closer and closer to.
Yeah. Did you have anybody to guide you? Like, how did you know where to go in the Bible? Or did you just start reading and go with it? I mean, it was just, man.
Yes.
That's really cool. Because a lot of people ask that question quite a bit. Where do I even start when it comes to reading scripture?
I was reading books on how to learn Greek, and I didn't do the Hebrew thing because that seemed weird, but Greek was close enough to English. I'm like, okay, let me try that. And I just remember doing things like that the first few years.
Mm-hmm. So then how long are you doing that on before this ministry thing begins and you start seeing that?
I would say a year. 1 year. Because with a year after I became a Christian, I was asked to lead in some small talks. And then within a few months after that, I was asked to give a sermon in a church in Arkansas. after a Bible camp. I'd been a Christian for a year. I'm at a Bible camp as a counselor. Like, what in the world? And I'm doing things like I just don't fit the mold of what the average counselor looks like, behaves like, and what have you. But that's what I was doing. And within 2 years, I began as a school teacher, teaching during the week and preaching on weekends for churches in and around West Missouri, Kansas City area, and out to Central Missouri. Small little churches here and there, just needing someone to preach the gospel. And that's what I was doing up until the following summer of 92, when I began full-time ministry because a church asked if I would.
Wow. Man.
No ordination process, no seminary. You talk about having God's Spirit guiding you. Well, I don't know how else to say it.
Man, that is really cool. And so you just kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to have some moments because my throat's getting locked up here, but we're going to get through this. So, is Franklin Church of Christ the first church that you have been the pastor of?
No. So I worked with the church in Macon, Missouri. Did that for about a year when I was asked by a person who'd been preaching for decades if I would do a preacher training program with him. So now I get to have a little bit of mentoring. And it was a 2-year mentoring program, knowing that at the end of 2 years, you're going to go into your own work. And so I did that. It was out of St. Louis, Missouri, in Kirkwood, and did that for 2 years. And then from there, went to Atlanta, a place called Fayetteville, Georgia, out south of Atlanta, and did that for 15 years before coming here. So 15 years there and about 14 here now.
Wow, 14 years in Nashville. So, I mean, you've been in this game for quite a while.
Yeah.
Man, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So what was the thing that drew you to come to Nashville?
So I was working with a church in the Atlanta area, and while there were a few things that were converging in my heart that turned into a 2-year prayer. And some of those things included, number one, why is it that people who preach, and so in Churches of Christ, we have preachers and then we have pastors. Okay. We call our pastors elders, and we call our preachers. And the twain shall never depart unless they become one, the preacher and the pastor become one person, if you will. But anyway,
I should refer to you as
Mitch.
Okay. I mean, not elder. Okay.
Yeah, I don't serve as a bishop or an elder or a pastor in that regard. So I evangelize, and then I teach, and then I preach in the pulpit, and preacher is the common vernacular in Churches of Christ. So what was happening around that time was I had a conversation with a preacher that had been doing it for about 40 years at the time. I said, why is it that preachers that are established in congregations within Churches of Christ go to these places that are established with good leadership, good elders, and preachers that are just getting started, don't have any experience, they're in the most difficult situations? Doesn't that seem awkward and opposite of what should be? And he kind of quietly agreed with me. And so it's soon after that I was thinking, what if I'm in a place, I've been there for 15 years, the church had been growing, and there's some good leadership, stable congregation. What if there's another person that could come in and grow in preaching from that vantage point? At the same time, my wife's family lives in North Alabama, and their health is on the decline, and we wanted to be able to honor them, and we wanted to be closer to be able to honor them. And then the last thing came out of nowhere, and that was, common to a lot of people who preach the gospel, finances. And I remember distinctly going through 2 scenarios just within days of each other where I had bad back from football and wrestling, and I was needing a steroid shot, but I couldn't afford one.
Because Troy took you out.
Troy memory of Troy. Thanks, Troy.
Yes, right. Shout out to Troy.
And I remember crying because this doctor had said, don't worry about the money. will take care of it.
Wow.
Well, I was so grateful, but on the heels of that, my wife came in the room. Our bedroom was my office. So came into the bedroom and was asking me, like, can we get this purchase? It's a larger purchase, but can we get it? And I didn't know how we could afford it without going into any debt. And I told her no. But when she left the room, what she didn't realize at the time was I just went to my knees crying, like, how can I afford anything to provide for my family? And it was with that I began adding that to this 2-year prayer that I just shared with you. And so the very next evening, I get a phone call from Franklin, Tennessee. One of the elders from the church at Franklin Church of Christ called and said, hey, I just saw some of your sermons online. This is 2010. Video's not a thing.
Sure.
Right? But there's audio sermons and what have you. And so he said, we'd be interested in you. If you would be interested. I said, well, I have no desire to leave where I'm at, but I've been, quite frankly, in prayer over the possibility of leaving if your church is a church that's struggling. And he confirmed that it had been. And so when I found out that it was only an hour away from Julie's parents, my wife's parents, I thought, could this be what God is calling me to? And after we came here, it was on the week after the flood. If you are familiar with the flood of 2010.
Oh, I'm
You were
very
here.
familiar
Okay.
with that. Yes.
Okay.
That was an experience.
Yeah, so we came the Sunday after the week. So May 1st was when the flood came, and May 8th was when we came. Well, we came on the 6th and came through and spent the weekend here. And we knew,
Wow.
this is where we need to be coming.
Man.
Yeah.
So with your in-laws living in North Alabama, it had nothing to do with Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is in North Alabama now. You know that?
Actually,
Buc-ee's wasn't
it's
even
one
around.
exit south of where I'm talking about.
No.
Yes.
What a
Yes.
great reason to go see your in-laws.
Oh, of course, Buc-ee's did not exist until, just a few months ago?
Yes. But
Yeah.
I don't know, Mitch. It's always been in my heart. It's always been there. Oh, man. Well, that's really cool. What's interesting is that you talk about praying because you're having some, not financial troubles, but you want to be able to afford some things and not go into debt. And you're praying for God to kind of, do a work. But then you said, when the church called, you're like, are you struggling? I want to go to a place that's struggling. And it's like the opposite of what I would think you would be praying for.
For the struggles that the church was having, finance is not one of them.
Okay.
They said, we can take care of that part of your life if you are interested in working with us. And so.
But it takes a step of faith still, even if that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
The church that's struggling can, the troubles can quickly become all across the board, if you know what I mean. So, wow, that's a really, really fascinating prayer. And so now you've been there 14 years. And how cool is that?
Yeah, this summer we'll make 14.
That's
Yep.
awesome.
Yeah.
And can we talk about Fishbowl at all?
Let's do it.
Yeah, because we recently met. It's probably been about several months to a year now, I think, that you came in and became a part of the Fishbowl group that I'm a part of. And it's full of pastors and preachers.
Yeah. See, you're picking up fast.
There you go. So we needed a preacher in the mix, and so we got Mitch.
That's right.
And you started coming and being a part of that group. And what have you? So for those who don't know, Fishbowl is basically we have pastors and preachers from different churches, and we get together once a month and just hang out, see how each other are doing, ask questions, really more just share what's on our heart. It's a way for us to build relationship and friendships with others who are in the same arena, who know what it's like in ministry, and you've been a blessing and a part of that group. Have you found it beneficial?
Absolutely. So about 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember now, I decided, and I had conversations with our church leadership, with our elders, that I wanted to be able to cross some aisles in the denominational world in the name of Christianity, because all I've ever known were those in churches of Christ. You can hear about everyone else by what you read, by what you see on TV. It's not the same as actually getting to know people of like precious faith that want to be faithful to God, but they come from what some people call our different religions, but it's all within Christianity, right? But different religions. And so I started doing that a few years ago, and I remember meeting. I saw a group of men studying the scriptures. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, or 8 o'clock in the morning, and so I asked them, like, "See you guys studying?" It's a group of about 15 men. I was like, "That's what y'all studying?" Like, I felt like this stray dog coming into a group and like, "Can I join you?"
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And then they adopted me and started studying with them. And it was with Cornerstone Presbyterian.
Okay.
And it was from there that one of the men from that congregation was telling me about Gateway Community, which is where Alan is at. Mm-hmm. And so I started going to the Monday morning Bible studies that Gary Henneke is teaching there. And so that's where Alan came up to me after he had been to a couple of classes, which is ironic because Alan doesn't like the mornings and he doesn't like coming to Bible studies early in the morning, right? Alan, you can testify to this.
Yeah, right. Alan, we're praying for
I'm
Alan.
not throwing you under the bus, Alan.
No.
Don't hurt my back. And so Alan invited me to come to Fishbowl. I think it was some in the spring or so of last year. And so haven't looked back since.
Man, I don't know that I would admit it if Alan was the one who got me to be a part of it, but that's all right.
All credit goes to Alan.
Alan is in episode 7 for anybody who wants to know of the Josh Huisman podcast. But man, no, that's really cool, and it's just neat. I've found that time I really treasure it.
Yeah.
That just having a place to be able to just share with others. And talk about ministry, talk about life, and all that stuff without having to worry about anything. Really,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's tough to be transparent when you're in this ministry space, and that's a great avenue for all of us.
Yeah, I remember Alan saying to me that, it can be a competitive space in the ministry. And while I'd never thought about it from that vantage point, I could see what he was saying, and I could see the place in which you can have a quote-unquote safe space. Mm-hmm. To just like share your heart with what's going on. So when things took place like on Maui, I could ask you all for prayers because the burdens of what was being shared with me was heavy, really heavy.
Right.
And so I'd share it with my church family. I shared with others, but I was able to share it with the men in Fishbowl that, are significant to my life. And
yeah,
that's important.
Well, and in this area in particular in Nashville, where you could throw a rock and hit 2 churches by accident.
Yes.
There's one literally not even on every corner. It's one in between here and the corner.
That is correct.
And when you're in that space, that's where that competitive word comes from, right? And there's a lot of times when it is competitive for some reason when it shouldn't be. That should be the furthest thing from our radars. If we're serving Christ, we're on the same team. If He's our Lord and Savior, right? And that's where, we in this Fishbowl, Alan, at Gateway as a Nazarene Church of Christ, New Hope's non-denominational. We've got some Presbyterian folks in there. It's just fun to get together and just talk and just enjoy life and enjoy ministry.
It's been helpful for me to understand, like, where do you come from? How do you get here where you're at in your walk with God? Mm-hmm. Because I've only known it this way all my life as an adult, 21 years old, coming to the Lord. That's all I've ever known. That's the lens that I'm familiar with. So you talk about a fishbowl. Well, I'm just one small corner within that fishbowl.
Yeah.
And so that bubble is a little bit larger now as a result of that experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very valuable to me.
Yeah. And one of the things you mentioned this already, on August 8th, the fire that took place, the huge fires that happened on Maui and how that affected you. And you started coming into our Fishbowl meetings and over the course of months and just sharing these stories that were,
heavy.
Honestly, just heavy horror stories.
Heavy.
That was clearly a burden on you. And you could just see, I think fondly of where I grew up. And anybody who's listening right now, think about where you grew up. And, Maui is your home.
Yeah.
I know you've been out of there for a long time, whatever maybe, but our hearts are attached to where we grew up. And then this happened, this catastrophic event that took place in August. And I don't know, could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Like what are some things you experienced especially with many friends and people who were still back there.
Yeah.
And what was going on?
I forget how I'd heard about it. If someone had called me, emailed, or texted and said, hey, what's going on in Maui, in Lahaina with the fires? So however I came to find out about it, it was a shock. And then soon after, like within hours, which is like the news was hitting the next day, because what started as a fire early in the morning, depending on which story you're getting, it had been snuffed out by the fire department, but there's embers with 80-mile-per-hour winds that are coming in from, behind the high school I went to. And those winds are rushing down out of the mountains. And when you have those winds coming down, you're having power lines go down. So now there's more sparks. There's rekindling going on. And so what was starting off with little fires here and there, at some point something caught and stayed. And by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, one of those fires actually picked up steam and started spreading. And this is where it is, I cannot even, as I'm explaining it to you, I'm having difficulty beyond what I'm sharing to comprehend. But as surely as 80 miles per hour is a certain speed, that's how fast these fires are traveling, right? Maybe not 80 miles per hour, but from a standpoint of, here's a family, and one of my classmates, her name is April, she shared with me, she said, Mitch, my son comes into the house and says, you got to get out of the house. And she has her 3 grandbabies and her husband. And before they could grab anything, they're just getting their grandchildren into the car, starting the car up and getting out of the driveway, and their house is already on fire from the time they were told by the son. So that's less than a minute, with fire being a decent part away from you, but coming in your direction. And as I shared with y'all that day, she was saying that she has to watch her neighbors who she knows and is growing up around in that neighborhood be on fire, and to see them. And to actually have to, in the name of getting out of fire that's engulfing their car, go over these bodies that are their neighbors. If that's not PTSD, I don't know what you get it from. I have another classmate that I wrestled with in high school. His name is Conrad, and there was one of those TikTok videos that showed these men in a vehicle, and you see the flames all around. I don't know if you saw one of those clips. He told me his vehicle was the one behind that vehicle. Oh, man. And their cars, like you have cars that their tires are beginning to burn. Their cars are just catching on fire. And so it is so traumatic that some of them, they cannot work. Some of my friends, because all they're doing is reliving this scene in their head that I've just expressed in just general detail every day for multiple times a day. And it just, like, why am I still here? Why is it that I'm alive and my neighbors have, gone? Things like that. And so those are some of the things that have been shared with me over the months from my classmates.
And then here you are, so far away, wanting to do everything you can to help. And you did so much. I know you were involved in a lot of things, trying to financially help, trying to, I'm sure you were having conversations with people, trying to talk them through that,
Correct.
But I think that in and of itself is, the challenge of that, of going, I don't know, I wasn't there to experience what you experienced, and so who am I to even try to relate to you to any degree? Because you
can't.
Yeah. And you're right about the PTSD. It just the horrific thoughts and memories and the things that people experience there.
And so, here we are, 5 months later, almost 6 months later, actually. And some of my friends and families have moved at least 10 times since the fire.
Well, you were telling me before we even went on, that they've determined now that in that fire, 4,000 homes were destroyed.
Well, not 4,000 homes, but there's approximately 4,000 that are currently homeless as a direct result of the fire.
Oh, okay.
Over 1,000 homes for sure.
4,000 people homeless who without, and then
there's about, I think, over 2,000 homes that burned down.
wow, and 100 lives lost.
Yes.
Man, you mentioned the flood that happened in 2010, and I couldn't even. I'm not trying to compare these things because I'm trying to picture a fire moving that fast. And the first thing that came to mind was the Nashville flood. I mean, where on that day in 2010, I was actually planning a youth event that we were going to be doing that night. And another a buddy of mine, Sean, who was helping me in the youth group, we went to Costco to go pick up some food and things for the night. And we pulled into the parking lot, and it started raining. Downpour. I mean, just flat out, couldn't see out the windshield. And I remember we sat in the truck, and we said, well, we'll wait it out.
So she started floating away.
So we waited there like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And it didn't let up. It just got worse. And so we finally go, well, let's go. It ain't stopping. And I'm talking about, it was raining enough that you didn't go, let's get out and run to the Costco.
Yeah.
You went, let's go home. And we went to pull out we passed there's little Barnes and Noble. There's a whole thing you can come across the parking lot. Because the main road on Mallory, the cars weren't moving because water was running down the middle of it. Now, I'd never seen this before.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you went, this is kind of strange. And then we tried to go out the side to get to Moore's Lane. And when we went to Moore's Lane, there's right across from the Barnes & Noble, there's it's like a dentist place and all that little stuff. That was completely, the first floor was underwater. And a car, as we pulled up, a car had turned over and was floating.
That's insane.
In that amount of time. And I remember thinking, remember when we were young, there was a show called Real TV where they used to always show like police officers rescuing people from the top of like flooded
I must have missed
cars.
that one.
It was one of those the early days of reality TV. But I remember thinking, this is how it happens. Because I used to make fun and go, how do people not know they got a helicopter sending them to rescue? I was like, we're about to be on one of those shows.
That's right.
Okay, that's water. Okay, and then I could tell you 15 stories of that day from the flood of experiences then from that point on that were just insane.
Yeah.
And the crazy one, I'll say this. When it started raining, it did that for 3 days. You remember? Like, it was like, it felt like 2 days, maybe 2 or 3 days where it didn't stop.
Okay.
It just kept raining and raining and raining and raining and not light, like downpour.
Yeah.
And so I'm going back then when you're sharing about this fire, and I remember, in that story, seeing the water coming and whatever. Now, what if it was fire moving like that, where it's just a steady moving toward like
a wall
of fire that's not staying where it's supposed to, is terrifying.
Yeah, it's like I was told the wall was between 50 to 100 feet tall of flames making its way across the city.
Oh my goodness! It's largely, we don't hear much about it anymore. You said 6 months removed from it and all that. It was one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you about it, because you were someone who we're like, hey, no, there's people still struggling and they're dealing with this.
I'll be going next month, taking my 2 youngest daughters and my wife to Maui to see family. But while there, we're going to one of the donation hubs, community hubs, because people that are homeless from the fires, they need to eat and they don't have jobs. So there's people, however, through government, through FEMA, Red Cross, whomever, I think Samaritan's Purse, lots of organizations involved for daily, like 3 meals a day. And so one of my classmates runs that hub and is able, and he's a former chef. Mm-hmm. He used to have his own company. Of course, it's gone now because of all this fire and what have you. But he asked if I would come and help, do that day, just kind of spend a day with them. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that and kind of getting a sense of what went on and how we can help going forward. Because like you're saying, the world has moved on to other news and what have you, but the lives are still impacted. Kind of like Waverly here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Their lives are still impacted from that flood, 2-3 years ago now?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you get forgotten, and everyone moves on to the next story, and that's got to be the toughest thing. I think it just adds to the PTSD of it.
Yes.
You know, why can't I get over this? Can you think of, like, if people wanted to donate or help, can you think of any? I mean, you mentioned Samaritan's Purse. You mentioned a couple other things there. And so I know.
Yeah. For me, and of course, I've not been collecting anything for the last month plus, but I wanted monies that goes directly to people I personally know and that I can actually give it to them directly. And so it's been through just a hodgepodge of either like a Give, Send, Go. I have one for that called Lahaina Fires or Lahaina Luna, class of 1986. So it's going specifically to my classmates or through Venmo. And then I just used a spreadsheet to audit myself and make sure that all the money's going. I still have $280 in the account ready to go to whomever on Maui right now. In fact, I'm thinking it's going to go to that donation hub unless I have a specific need of my classmates. So,
It's a Venmo under your name that you're
under
just
my
doing?
wife's name.
Okay.
I think it's under Julie Davis, Venmo. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know, because there may be other Julie Davises, but that's how I've been getting monies from people literally all around the United States.
Well, it's really awesome of you to do that. And the work you've been doing, I know from the beginning of all this, you've just wanted to help as much as you possibly could, which is really
Appreciate that.
neat. So when you go back, I'll be praying for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That you're able to help however you can.
Yeah.
If you ever have some free time, look up Troy. And get your rematch.
Actually, the rematch was he beat me the next time. I beat him on that one, and then I went to Oahu, a place called Kahuku High School. Here's a story. How about this story? You talk about how did all this happen, okay? So I end up in Kearney, Nebraska at a D2 wrestling school, right? And mind you, I'm not a Christian, not walking with the Lord. I'm at a frat party. And in this frat party in Kearney, Nebraska, I'm the only one from Hawaii at this school, at this college.
Okay.
Right? 7,000 students. Hey, Mitchell Davis. I'm like, no one talks like that in the mainland. Hey, Mitchell. I'm looking like, yeah, that's me. And like, hey, brah, we know who you is. And like, yeah, how do you know who I am? He goes, because you can go beat our teammate Troy Schatzer. I'm like, what? They're from the same high school wrestling team as Troy. They went to school in South Dakota, or driving from South Dakota at whatever school they were going to, came down to South Central Nebraska on a whim.
Yeah. And
saw me at a frat party.
And they met the famous Mitchell Davis. Come on.
How does that work?
Were you state champ when you beat him?
I was not. I was ranked number 1 in the state. I had an injury, and that my dreams were lost. I took 3rd that year, my senior year.
So if you and me were to wrestle right now, you'd kick my butt?
Like I said, I can barely hit a fly though, but
Okay.
I still do jiu-jitsu though. I love doing it, and as of 5 years ago was my last competition internationally.
I have no chance.
So
I have no chance at all. I'm not going to be nice to you from now on.
if that's what gets people to be nice, I'll take anything I can get. I'll take anything.
If someone in your congregation, preacher, I disagree. Oh, you do, huh? You want to take this outside?
We had a sweet sister in Christ that just passed away, and we had the funeral last week. She's a matriarch in our congregation. But I remember one day she came to church and gave me a T-shirt that said something, and I forget exactly what it is, but it's like preacher because ninja stomping, something with the devil, it is not a good title. And so it was one of those things. And then I had another friend of mine, very dear friend. In fact, I did his wedding in Hawaii back in 97. And he had a T-shirt made. It was, "My preacher can beat up your preacher." I'm like, what kind of T-shirt is that?
The one I would wear everywhere. That's what it would be.
It's so hilarious.
You need to be wearing that, man.
I should get it recopied. But then again, the Lord has been working on my heart. The last thing I need is to go like this.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much for coming in here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was a lot of lot of good information, a lot of fun, but then also, humbling with what's going on here. So I am going to be praying for you as you go to Maui.
I do appreciate that.
And see those things. And I'm sure there's going to be some emotional moments for sure in that whole thing. And so, but hey, special thanks to you, Mitch Davis. He's a preacher at Franklin Church of Christ.
That's right.
And a wonderful member of our Fishbowl group. And so thank you so much here.
Thanks for having me.
And just wanted to say one more time, what's the Venmo? If somebody...
Julie Davis.
At Julie Davis?
Yes.
Okay. And then what was the other one you said?
It's Give, Send, Go, and it's for...
Send, Go.
GiveSendGo.com or .org, I'm not sure which. And then it's Lahaina Luna, class of 1986, something like that. I forget the exact wording of it, but when you search that in Give, Send, Go, you'll find it, or do a Google search and you'll find it. And I think the organization has a 3% credit card fee and a few cents of fees and all that kind of stuff.
And the rest, do.
Yeah. But the rest goes, 100% of that money does go to them and not to that organization. So just the credit card fee.
All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been awesome. And so thank you to Mitch Davis. And thank you to you and all of you listening right now for being a part of this podcast. And it, again, as we said from the very beginning, just go ahead there, share it with your friends, share it with your neighbors. And we will be here with new episodes each and every week. So we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care.
All right. See ya.